I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, April the 24th, where Tuesday was a fairly quiet day, had no fat cattle trade, didn't have any huge feeder cattle auctions, had several good ones, just some decent quotes. Your board was down just a little bit, but not horrible, and not a whole lot to talk about, with the exception of the news that a class action suit was filed against your Big Four packers. And that class action suit was filed by RCAF, one of your cattlemen's associations, and 4 of their member cattle feeding ranches. And I'm going to try to talk about this and without pissing people off, but I've got an uncanny ability to piss people off. You can ask my ex-wife. But when you start talking about things that have to do with these cattlemen's associations, people get their feathers ruffled up pretty fast. And RCAF being the most outspoken, there's basically 3 big ones: RCAF, United States Cattlemen's Association, and NCBA. NCBA having the best letterhead, the biggest voice, the most members, the most influence in Washington and across the United States, and all the money. They have the most influence on how your checkoff dollars are spent, and they rarely pick battles unless they know they can win them. And they're the most politically correct. You've got RCAF, which is by far the most outspoken, the most right-wing, which we're all pretty much conservative and wear our conservative values on our sleeve, but RCAF is the most outspoken there, and their leader, Bill Bullard, I mean, he goes after them. And I tell you what, and you got to admire that, you got to like that. It's mostly filled with members in the northern plains and the mountain states, big ranchers, which is great because a lot of big producers are members there, and they push things and they push things hard. Your U.S. Cattlemen's Association lies somewhere in the middle. U.S. Cattlemen's did a good job working against the ELDs. They have made a lot of strides in fake beef. They probably have the smallest membership, but have some really key people that go out and are pushing for things to help the beef industry. The moral of the story is all of these associations are supposed to be going for the same goal, to continue to support the cattle industry, the beef industry, and for its longevity, and make it competitive where people can maintain their ranches, continue to be in the cattle industry and things like that. If all 3 of them pooled their forces and got together, it'd be unbelievable what they could get done. But a lot of times you see the 3 kind of comparing who gets the most credit for what goods happened, or who needs to be doing more to address a certain situation. But I'll quit talking about that. Probably already ruffled a bunch of feathers, but that's okay. RCAF and 4 of its member cattle feeding ranches has filed a class action suit in Chicago against your Big Four packers, and the main issue is them accused of conspiring to drive prices down. No way. I know you guys are thinking the same thing I am. No way. But I tell you what, it's kind of like trying to define pornography. You know, I know it when I see it, but it's a little bit hard to define, and it's hard to prove. And it doesn't help whenever, ever so often, you have GIPSA, Packers and Stockyards Administration, come in and do a so-called inspection or a report on there, and every time they get done, they say, nope, no, that's all on the up and up. They're not conspiring to do anything. Yeah, right. You know, what little evaporating trade that we have, a negotiated trade, especially in your 5-area feeding region, it happens in about, maybe it used to be 10 minutes, we're probably down to about 6 minutes now. And if you're not aligned just right whenever it happens, you get left out in the cold, and your cattle are on the show list again the next week. and you may fall victim to their not wanting to deal with you the next week because you didn't trade the last week. And all of us within the industry know that that happens. How you prove it, I don't know. But in 2018, the cattle industry set a record for your producers getting the smallest percentage of retail beef prices. So that ought to tell you something. But you know, it's going to be kind of hard to fight against that. You know, who are you really fighting when you're talking about the big four? You've got corporate executives that are out and then their bonuses depend on and their jobs depend on that corporation making as much money as possible. How do you do that? You buy low and you sell high. They're not cooperatives. And so, you know, anytime you're buying a pickup, or if you're buying some cattle in an auction, or if you're going to a farm sale, you try to buy something as cheap as you can. If you get an opportunity, and when you get an opportunity to sell it, you want to get as most as you can for it. And there's lots of things that can happen in between there. But I tell you what, most of your cattle people are definitely in support of this. You know, your packers, you know, everybody loves to cuss them, but we all need them. You know, you got a feed yard. You can only fit so many of them in your freezer, and your family can only eat so much of it. You've got to have them. But we'll see how that kind of turns out. It'll be interesting to see. The thing that I hate to see on this individual suit is that they're kind of hanging everything on everything that's happened since 2015. Well, in 2015, we were coming off of the highest prices in history for cattle and beef. And a lot of the reason that we were coming off of that, it was artificially inflated. And so they probably don't want to mention that a whole lot. But yeah, we did come off of that. And everybody asks, why did the market fall so bad in 2015? It fell so far because it had so far to fall. But I am glad to see them doing this. It's at least drawing some attention to what your cattle people are going through, what your cattle feeding industry is going to. And the fact of the matter is, it's mostly the government's fault that all this has happened anyway. If they would have just enforced P&S regulations, you know, back in the old stockyard days, the river market days, you know, you had your packing houses sitting right on the yards there. Well, your packing houses were not allowed to feed cattle. That was part of P&S regulation, because that was a conflict of interest. Well, when you saw all your packers move out to the southern plains and up in the northern plains going after the cattle and away from the stockyards, all that kind of went away. Yeah, they may not have called it, you know, this Packers feedlot, but it was still a subsidiary, and so they still had their needs covered. Now they've sold out most of that, but they've signed deals with these big corporate feeders that have taken those over, and they still have their needs covered. But if the government would have enforced that before it got out of hand, this never would have happened. If the government would have enforced the monopolistic practices instead of letting them get so much of the industry, when you got an industry that so many Americans rely on for their living, and so many American people, or the whole population depends on it to feed them, or even in parts of the world too, it's hard to let such a small group of individual corporations take over 80% of the business. And but that's what has happened, and be interesting to see how it turns out. I will say I'm glad to see RCAF using their energies to go after something besides country of origin labeling, because I think they've got a better chance of just about everything but that. But I will move on now, and we'll start talking about the market. Let's look at the board for Tuesday. April live cattle futures down 17 cents at 128.32. June down 45 at 121.12. May feeder cattle down $1.17 at 149.62, and August was up 7 cents at 159.70. No fat cattle trade to speak of at all in the country, but I'm always tickled to talk about an auction market that has a good fat cattle sale. One of the best ones around is Stockman's livestock auction there in Yankton, South Dakota. Had 1,450 head of slaughter cattle, including everything. And most of your prices on fat steers and heifers for just your basic fat steers and heifers, and they get the good quality ones up there. Those guys know how to feed them. Most of them sold from 127 to 131.75. Now your drug-free and or NHTC cattle that get a premium there to some of those packers, most of those ranged from 130 to 135 and a quarter. But pretty good volume there for an auction sale, and awfully good prices in there. Goes to show, you know, and it's not mom and pop custom kills buying all those cattle. You're getting some big packers coming in there and buy those. They might be regional packers, but still. Box beef cutout values a little bit lower, but still higher than the average trade of last week. Choice cuts 234.11 down 37 cents for the day. And Tuesday afternoon, your select cuts at 221.26 down $1.38. Let's talk about some of your feeder cattle markets. OKC West and El Reno, Oklahoma had their calf sale on Tuesday. Just about 1,600 head of calves there, and just not a lot of cattle moving. As I talked last week, we're kind of in a lull. We've got a lot of cattle still turned out on wheat, on grazed out wheat, and they'll be out there a few more weeks, so not seeing a lot of them come to town. A lot of those old crop short or calf weight yearlings, short yearlings, they've already moved because the big drive for the stocker buyers has already gone by. What you get now is a lot of smaller producers with new crop calves. But much lower undertone on the calf market at OKC West, and really didn't have good enough tests on the weights that were available to call the market there. Ozarks Regional Stockyards in West Plains, Missouri, 3,300 head there with all classes of feeder cattle. Market was kind of uneven there too, and a lot of soft calves, new crops there, and balling calves. And with it's getting ready to get hot, you know, it's hard to get people excited about them. The yearlings that were on hand sold very good. Look at this individual quote out of West Plains: 74 head of 648 pound steers bring $168 right on the Arkansas line. Another good sale over in Kansas. Fredonia, Kansas had a good market there. Well over 1,100 head of feeder cattle on offer there. Look at this individual quote, and these cattle are going to a feed lot. They are not going to turn out bought by a feed yard, and they will go into a lot. But look at this price: 65 head, 760 pound steers bring $154.10. And the big price on the biggest steers out of Kingsville, Missouri, Kingsville Livestock Auction, 57 head of 885 pound steers bring $144.75. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.